Good afternoon, everybody, or anybody. Welcome to the studio this afternoon. I am just going to do a little bit of streaming. I felt like doing some art just to take my mind a little bit off some of the pain. I've got a little bit of pain from some surgery yesterday, so I thought if I did this, it will actually sort of help me feel not quite so bad. So whilst I'm doing it, I thought I might as well share it with you guys as well. What I'm doing, and that camera could do with being a little bit more over there. Right, so I'm going to do some more grass just behind the loco here, and then the sky behind it. And at some point I'm going to fill some more black in here. It's a bit too sparse, I think. I need this to be on the threading position. Sometimes the most frustrating part about the whole of this is getting the thread through the threader. The thread is relatively sort of fluffy, and so sometimes it just doesn't want to go through the wire. So let's see if I can actually concentrate on doing this reasonably. I'm going to need a pencil just to mark a line. Let's get it somewhat level. So where should we have grass to in the background? Don't need much, I think. Probably a horizon, actually somewhere around the middle of the ring would be just ideal, I think. So the middle of the ring's about there. Let's decide. So we've got definitely about there, I think. I'm just trying to decide what angle that the train should be at. Probably about here. So just somewhere across there, like that, and we'll go from there. I'll do this back end first, it'll be the easiest, or rather the quickest, certainly. So I'll start from this end here, because I want to try and create a circular pattern on the other side. So if I start from that corner where I've already got to, I can just continue the circular outside. Now sculpting the outside edge, which means I'm creating loops on the other side at different depths. The outside here is the minimum depth. I'll then step up a little bit and create another couple of rows which are slightly longer, and then another couple of rows which are slightly longer, but then I'll be at my working depth. So at that point I've created like a rounded edge. Now sometimes, like now, That thread's getting in my way to see what I'm doing. I just need to keep this waste or edge cloth away as well. I don't want to punch through that accidentally. Wouldn't necessarily be a problem. It should in theory pull off, but it could end up pulling lots of threads out if I do that. You need to be really close to one another in order to create a nice smooth and firm edge. Just losing count there. Actually, these want to be a little bit deeper. We're now on to the the fifth row, which would be at depth 3, which is my working depth for this particular piece. But most of the time I use depth 3 as the working depth. It's a nice compromise between using a lot of thread but still getting a nice sort of pile effect on the other side, and giving me room to sculpt with as well, because then I basically can go about 2 depths shallower and about 3 or 4 depths deeper. Right, and I'll switch to working in a different direction, just because I prefer working away from the line I'm working on, so I prefer to sort of go from here that way, so I'm working into clear space rather than working backwards into it. I just find it easier to work that way. Of course other people would find it differently. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. Well, the wrong way is not getting the threads through or them pulling out, I guess, but every way that creates a successful loop is the right way. So welcome to anybody that's viewing the studio this afternoon. Just an ad hoc stream. I had some surgery yesterday afternoon. It's bothering me a little bit, so I felt like doing some art to take my mind off it, and I thought showing you guys what I'm doing would also help with that as well. So here we are, broadcasting from the studio this afternoon. What you're looking at is Punchcraft, which is creating images using coloured thread, and the needle is pushing that thread or punching it through the material through to the other side. So you're looking at the back side or the working side here, and it creates loops of thread on the other side, very much like a carpet or a rug. Although often they're created these days with a slightly different method, but certainly rugs are often made in a similar way. But generally speaking, they use lots of needles rather than one at a time. You can also make rugs like this as well, just using a slightly larger tool, which essentially is just a larger bore needle, which can take the larger diameter wool that's used. So the design is of a British railway locomotive, also used in quite a few other countries as well, but this one's in a British livery. It's called a Class 66 locomotive. Why it's called a Class 66, I don't know. I just think it happened to look like a nice image that I wanted to try and do. I do think railway locomotives often make really nice pictures. There we go. So that's some grass at this side of the. Let me cut the other thread off as well before I catch it on something. There's nothing holding these other than pure friction is holding these threads and loops in place. You can, when it's finished, spread fabric glue over it, which will sort of lock the back in place, but doesn't really need it unless it's going to get some fairly heavy use. Got a thread there which is just slightly proud, so all I need to do is take a pair of scissors and just chop it off. You can actually shave this stuff, so you in theory you can actually sculpt it afterwards if necessary. Be a bit difficult, I guess, but perfectly feasible. The sharp pair of scissors. You wouldn't end up with loops then, of course. You'd end up just with single-ended fabric, so to speak, stuck through, but still fairly reasonable. Now I'm going to do the other side here, and then I'll get into the sky. And again, because I'm sculpting the edge, I'm going to start from right against the edge, because I know if I'm coming this way I have to guess where to start the sculpting. If I start from this end and work inwards, I know exactly where the sculpting wants to be. Trying to keep a circular style or edge to it to match the frame that it's currently in. That way it can be put back into one of these frames, or left in it for that matter, but it can be put back in and centered up, and it will look reasonable. Bit difficult actually to do, because sometimes the material does stretch, and you do end up sometimes having to pull the material back through the cloth, through the edge of the loop. It does pull through, and so sometimes it can be really hard to actually get a smooth circular edge, but it's one of the problems to be overcome with this art form. So I'm going, because this is a variable depth needle, I'm going around this first 2 rows here with the needle at its minimum depth. I'll then increase it by 1 depth stop and do another couple of rows, and then increase it by another depth stop and do another couple of rows. Then I'm at my working depth, or the depth that I normally punch these pictures at, and from there I can just carry on and do the rest of the image. Need to try and get fairly close. The closer I can get around this edge piece, the better the sculpting looks. It looks a lot smoother that way. Crunching noises that you sometimes hear is actually the threads of the material being cut or broken. Now some materials that will create great big holes. I say that from experience because I have tried similar looking materials and they just don't work. The ideal sound to hear when you're pushing this needle through the thread is actually no sound at all, because what that means is it's pushed the threads to one side rather than cutting or breaking any. Now I'm at my working depth, and I shall carry on across here, and you can actually rotate the needle slightly to try and get it at the right angle in respect to the weft, the warp, whatever it is, the actual angle that this material is wound in, so woven in. And if you do that, then it goes through a lot smoother. Well, I must admit there's a slight crunching sound sometimes you can get with this, which is a real satisfying sort of sound. Now I'm trying to get a fairly tight set of loops on the other side, so these punches, stitches, however you wish to describe them, are fairly close to one another to try and keep it really tight on the other side. For some pictures you want them to be loose, so you'll move them further apart. It's all part of the, in quotes, the artistic decision that you make as to just how you want the piece to look. just around here it will get a little bit awkward to come in and out again with a couple of rows, so I'm just working at a different angle for a short period of time just to fill this area in, and I'll carry on working in the other direction. It doesn't actually matter which direction you work in, it doesn't really show up on the other side unless you've got really sparse loops. So if you were doing lots of long tall grass, perhaps you might want the loops to be fairly sparse, and therefore the direction might matter, because you'd be able to see sort of the lines of them. But here, where they're really close together, doesn't matter, you can do them any direction you happen to feel like. Really just filling in between the lines. So again, good afternoon to anybody visiting the studio this afternoon. Much appreciate you having you around and taking a look at what I'm doing. This particular craft is called Punchcraft, but if you're not familiar with my streaming, then I do quite a few crafts, generally speaking in rotation. So at the moment we're doing some carving. In the process of carving a dragon, as sort of envisaged by Anne McCaffrey, who is or was, should I say, a science fiction author. But unfortunately I'm not able to do that today due to some surgery that I had yesterday in my stomach area, and it's making to try and do carving would actually hurts, basically, because you stabilise your body through your stomach muscles when you're carving, and that was hurting. So I'm doing this, which is called Punchcraft, as a substitute just for the moment. We also do pyrography, which is it is a craft form which creates images using heat on wood or other material. Actually, it doesn't have to be wood. Gourds are used quite often, as is leather. You can use paper and card, although thick paper is generally preferable, and other material like bone can also be used as well. As well as that, I also do scraper board. What scraper board is a layer of thin card which is then coated in porcelain clay, which is rolled into a really flat layer, and then once that's dried, it's covered in black Indian ink, so you end up with a black board. You then use sharp tools like scalpels or anything fairly pointed, a blade or anything like that, and you scrape away the Indian ink. Depending on how thick and you do that, what shapes you use, etc., you can then create monochrome artworks. And if you want, what you can also do is use coloured inks to actually apply colour, because the colour will then soak into the porcelain clay and give you a coloured area. So there's going to be some really nice images created in that way. Scraper board though also comes in different styles, not just the porcelain, but you can actually get like a metal foil back underneath the Indian ink, and therefore you can get metal coloured etching type effects, and that generally comes in like a silver, copper, gold, and you can also get some plastic backed scraper board, so then you get kind of like holographic effects or similar multicoloured effects to that. Some other crafts that I haven't yet streamed and won't be able to for a little while, but things like glass engraving I also do, airbrushing, high-speed rotary carving. The high speed refers to the rotary bit there, not the fact that I carve particularly fast. I also do some rug making, some cross stitching and other stitching crafts associated with image making. And from time to time I also do a few things like model making. I have a 1/12 scale tank sat to one side of me here, which I need to finish at some point, and that will probably be done on stream when I have the space to do it. So I tend to hop around and do different things, try new art forms out. Always interested in them and seeing what other people do. Excuse me. My stomach is still aching quite a bit, especially as I move. It will unfortunately be a few days before the muscles and everything else settles down. Okay, so we've got some grass there, and I don't need this green anymore, so I shall unthread it. Now then, next thing is going to be the sky, and I haven't quite decided at the moment whether to go for the light sky or the dark sky, or whether to do a combination of both. I was thinking maybe of a light sky and then just a dark area at the top, but actually that probably won't look great. Or even a dark. You end up of course with a line right across, and I suppose I could always do sort of a darker outside area and then a lighter inside. Yeah. I mean, the grass you can get away with like this because you've got the shapes, you know, and the shadow there. But there's nothing really for the sky. I don't know whether to do the sky light or do the sky dark. I think I'm going to end up having to do it all in one piece. I just don't know whether to go light or to go dark. I'm beginning to think perhaps that the dark may actually just make the whole piece look rather dark. And mind you, that's... I don't know. I was about to say this looks rather white, but of course in bulk it's going to look like this once I put a large area in. I don't quite know which resembles the sky most. Decisions, decisions, as they say. Given that we've got a shadow, I think we'll go with a light, because it's it's essentially like a sunny day, so the sky is going to be really light, as opposed to a darker, more dull day, where it would be darker and possibly towards a grey. We could also be working towards sunset as well, I guess, but we've got a relatively short shadow. So there's my needle threader. We'll do it on the light. So a really long thread, obviously, to go down the length of this needle, and just dampen the edge of this thread, just so that the two ends, the two threads that form the two threads that form the thread. A bit of a backward statement, but there's sort of two, as you can see, there's two plies, as they get called, that form the thread, and they both need to be threaded through the needle, down its length and out the side of it here as well. It is important you come out the side. If you don't, the loops don't form and you just end up pulling the thread back out. It's part of how the threads actually hold themselves in place in the fabric, is by having them come out the side of the needle. Okay, what I'm going to do is sculpt the edge just like we have done here and go all the way around. So I will be doing that first on the first depth of needle, and then we'll gradually work up a little bit thicker, and then to the final depth, just to do the whole area. Doesn't really matter which side I start at, but I am starting it just inside the hoop. That's the easiest way to get started when I'm sculpting, starting from the low point, working upwards from there, because I know where the low point wants to be. If I started, say, doing this from the locomotive towards the edge of the hoop, I then have to guess where to start lowering the length of the loops, and whilst usually I'll get it right, it's a lot easier to start with the lowest ones, because you know exactly where they want to go. I'll probably end up using the whole of this bobbin of colour to do this particular piece of sky. You can go through a lot more thread than you might think. That sharp clicking you're hearing is actually the needle breaking threads, or breaking threads in the material that I'm going through. That's not ideal, of course, but this material has been woven to withstand that, and it does so surprisingly well. I can try and minimize that by twisting the needle in certain directions. Just the way in which it's the material is woven, with the needle in certain directions it slips between the threads a lot easier. But sometimes it's just really hard to find what that particular angle is. And it can also be a little bit frustrating as well, because sometimes with the needle at the wrong angle it really doesn't want to go through the material at all. It's quite strong as this material, and there are times when it does successfully resist the needle being pushed through it, and you start having to move the needle about a little bit or waggle it or otherwise just to get it to go through. Eddie Fall Guy, good evening, welcome to the studio this afternoon. Take it you got back from the school okay? I figured that I felt like doing something to take my mind off the fact that my stomach hurts a little bit, and I can't do any carving because that uses my stomach muscles. So I'm doing this, and I figured if I was going to do this I might as well do it on stream. Glad I actually caught your stream. It makes a change though for once to be able to see it. I won't say from start to end because I didn't catch the start, but without having to leave in the middle. That bracelet was very nice, by the way, it looked lovely. Did you say you'd come up with a flower design, or is that one that's used a fair bit? Actually, I'm guessing most designs of rings have probably been done somewhere before. If there's anybody that doesn't know, by the way, Eddie Fall Guy, who said good afternoon there in the stream, is also a streamer. He streams making chainmail jewellery. So this afternoon he was making a bracelet out of silver light or lilac rings and some dark blue rings, some very pretty flower-like designs strung together to create a bracelet. So if you're not familiar with AD and his streaming, I suggest you click on his name and follow for the next time he goes live doing that. He also streams games as well, by the way, at least Euro Truck Simulator, so another thing to keep an eye out for, especially if you like that game. Okay, stream working. Good evening, or good after. I say good evening because I normally only stream on an evening. Good afternoon, welcome to the studio this afternoon. How's it going? Not too bad, thank you. I am recovering from some surgery from yesterday in my stomach area, so it's a little bit painful to use my stomach muscles. So this is in the way of helping me to forget about that for a little bit of time, the discomfort, and enjoy doing something. And by streaming what I'm doing, it kind of also, helps to take my mind off it and actually stops me just giving up and going and doing something else. Because otherwise it's quite hard to sit still. I'm not sure you've 9:40. It's 9:45 a.m. Ah, okay. It's 3:45 p.m. here in the UK at the moment. So somewhat later on in the day. No, it wasn't. It isn't particular fun, but you know these things are necessary. So no point in worrying about it. You just do something, take your mind off it, and move on. So stream working. Are you interested? Do you do art yourself, or are you just having a look around creative, or do you like watching art and crafts being done? Sorry, this is a little bit difficult to see what I'm doing because I'm working right against the edge of the hoop, and I'm just pushing loops of thread through this material, and they then rest on the other side, very much like a rug or a carpet looks. Oh, well, as a job, stream working, or as a hobby? It's an interesting thing. I did a little bit as a hobby a while ago, and I used to, well, a hobby for myself in that I used to create my own DVDs. So a little bit of video editing and a little bit of DVD creation and DVD player state machines, and yeah. Amazing what you can make a DVD player. You can program a DVD player, in case people weren't aware of that. You can get them to run little programs. Ah, cool. You're self-employed doing video editing. You can always let me know. It's always interesting to know what's going on out there. Not going to promise anything, but I don't mind looking at things. I think Steam would. Sorry, I think Twitch would prefer. Would you send it in a private messaging stream working? Because apart from the fact that I'm not about to go and look in the middle of the stream, I don't want to lose. Don't want to lose it. And once it disappears out the chat buffer, I can't get it back. Thank you. I assume Night Watch you were talking to Stream Working, so you may wish to be a little bit circumspect, Stream Working, about advertising your service in Twitch. Because somehow I'm not particularly sure Twitch would be that comfortable with it, shall we say. Okay. But don't forget, when you're a big and powerful organisation yourself, then other people want to do the same thing. Yeah, once you've taken over the world. Right, because I'm sculpting the edge of this, I'm creating a nice rounded edge rather than just letting the loops flop on the other side. I've just increased the depth of the needle by 1 stop, which makes the loops a little bit longer, and now I go back around again a couple of times before I'm then at my final working depth on this piece. You can't hear the... I seem to be broadcasting audio. Well, I'm about to say I seem to be broadcasting audio, but if Night Watch can't... but if you can't hear me, you can't hear me. Yeah, sorry, I'm not very loud at the moment. I'm kind of I don't feel fantastic, shall we say, but it's really difficult. I can turn the mic up a bit. Sometimes it comes out really loud and other times it's not. This control's a little bit twitchy, which when you say, you know, we're on Twitch, then twitchy and Twitch seem to go together. See how that is. I've turned it up a little bit. I'm probably peaking now. Not quite clipping, I don't think, but we're getting quite close to it, so it should be a bit louder. My voice this afternoon is a little bit quiet. Okay, so sorry, I'm not able to do transcription, Night Watch. Now the punching this through the material, it actually tends to pull it through the loop, so it's a lot easier to work with if the material is quite taut. So I just need to keep pulling it back. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the crunching noise that you might be hearing from me punching this needle through is because the needle's actually breaking the threads. And so when you don't hear a sound, that actually means the needle's pushed the threads to one side. And it actually is faster and takes less effort if that actually occurs. So it's you can try and get the right angle by just twisting the needle around, and it goes a lot faster if you can get that. You know, it's not catching on the threads and having to basically break them in order to get through. Trying to keep the threads going through very close to one another here, because that creates a nicer sculpted edge. It doesn't leave any threads flopping about, basically, because of they all support each other when they're packed close together. So this is the sky. Since it seems like it was a sunny day in this on the image I'm creating because of the shadow on the grass, I'm doing it using a light sky colour. So we're just forming the outer edge of the sky now. Using a sculpting technique with this needle. By altering its depth you can adjust how long the loops are on the other side, and that can create sort of a relief or a 2.5 dimensional sort of sculpty effect on the other side. Sorry, I'm kind of laughing because it's almost the same sort of thing I say when I'm carving, because I do relief carving. And it's a 2.5 dimensional image that's created with wood carving as well. Kind of doing the same sort of thing, just doing it using a different methodology. Although of course here we have the advantage of different coloured wools, which you don't get when you're carving. Yeah. Unfortunately the material does fray. Sometimes gets in the way a little bit. One reason I don't cut the material off just behind the loop here is because the frayed edges would sort of get in the way whilst I'm doing this. But equally, although I'm creating a round pattern, this could be mounted in a square frame, and in which case of course you'd want some extra material to mount it. So I tend to leave the material long until it's finally mounted. I may well leave it in this ring, or it may just go into the portfolio, in which case it'll go in as a square of fabric. Punching gradually drags the material through the loop, and then it slackens off. It's a lot easier to do this if the material is kept taut. I suspect I won't do carving tonight, 84 guy. I think it will probably hurt too much. I did try it last night, and after 2 or 3 minutes, it just wasn't going to work. And I think rather than set up and try it tonight, I'll probably do. I don't actually know what I'll do. Depends on whether I finish this, I guess. May just continue with this as I did some on stream last night. I may well do something like a scraper board. I've got one that's I started to do, which was of Earthrise, which isn't finished yet, so I may well just continue doing that one. I started that before the carving, but didn't actually finish it on stream. I think I should be alright to go back to carving tomorrow night. It's getting to the stage of a really sort of a slightly painful ache at the moment, shall we say, if I try and use my stomach muscles. Here I'm resting my arms on the table, so I'm not actually using my stomach muscles at all, which makes it so I'm a lot more comfortable. Right, so that's the outer edge done. So I've got a nice outer edge on there. Now all I do is fill it all in. And then I may fill a bit more black in. There's some white spaces in here. You can sort of just see them on camera. I don't know where to leave them because it's sort of it's a bit like light reflecting off of things in the undercarriage of the train, so I may just leave them as a sort of a, shall we say, an unintended consequence. Not quite sure. It's sort of a happy, as Bob Ross might say, a happy accident, or might have said. Not sure. I've not decided whether I like that or whether I actually want to fill them in because it looks like I haven't done it properly, but I don't know. Just one of those things. Anyway, I shall carry on with the sky. So we now got a working depth. Now this sky is probably going to take most of this bobbin of thread, which is kind of surprising. You look at the depth of that, and I don't know how many yards it's got on it, 60, 100 yards of thread or something, and yet most of that will go into this. Yeah, so unfortunately I may need to disappoint you if you were intending or wanting to watch carving tonight, 84 guy. Thank you very much for that, AD Fall Guy. Stream working, what will I do with this when it's done? I don't actually know. In a lot of what I do because I like making things, I like creating things. Once they're done, I kind of lose interest in them. That's kind of what I was saying on AD Fall Guy stream this afternoon. I've made, I've made the model trucks and the tank is half finished beside of me, but not that interested in playing with them once they're done. I like the creating bit. This will probably, because I don't have I don't like a lot of stuff on walls and things, so I don't tend to put much art up on walls. It tends to be very special pieces that go up there. So this would be filed in the portfolio, or if anybody wanted to purchase it, then I'd be quite happy to sell it. Stream working. Thank you very much for following the studio. That's most kind of you. I do appreciate anybody who wishes to do that. It's a bit different though when you're commissioned to do it, though, isn't it? Stream working. I mean, than if you're doing it just for yourself. In terms of what to do with it afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, with your personal stuff. Yeah. A lot of what I end up doing, whether it's this or even at work, I find the same thing. The interesting bit is in the doing. So at work, where I'm doing a lot of statistical stuff, the interesting thing is pulling out, doing the analysis, and once it's analysed, I'm not interested anymore really. Somebody else can use the results. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way at work, but Well, it makes no difference whatsoever what angle I do any of this at. I tend to prefer going in a particular direction, so I end up, when you're coming to a diagonal line as the end of where you're working, it's kind of quite hard to, well, it's hard to keep it in neat rows. I do kind of like neat rows. I like matters, as I say, it matters not a jot just how much or which angles you work at or anything like that, but you can literally do dots all over the place if you really want it to do it, but it's almost it's not quite an obsession, it's not OCD or anything like that, it's just, working in lines is probably the easiest way of doing it, just because of the way your arms and hands move. Just sit back a moment, my stomach muscle was tightening up a bit. Of course, Eddie, if Mrs. Aragonat wasn't in this evening, then I may well do an art form you're familiar with. Or rather, I might try and do an art form you're familiar with. Yes, I suppose it does. I mean, it's no good actually having sort of lots of thread just laid on the back here, because it serves no purpose on the back. So, skipping about too much, but you can do little blocks, little squares, different people, I imagine you just use different techniques. It's really just a case of filling it in. And like, you probably can't see it, but the weave on this has, on this side has lines going sort of diagonally like that. And sometimes you follow those because they act like a guideline to create sort of straight lines, but when you turn these over, and if you look on the back, you can see the lines are in all sorts of directions. Once you turn it over, you can't tell at all, so the only lines you see are the ones that you intend it to put in, like this yellow line here, or the writing, for example, or the rails. Because they're intentionally a straight line, but the rest is just a block of colour. Ow! Sorry, I just caught myself in a place I didn't really want to. Okay, yeah. Actually, I'm trying to think how old this is. I know originally this tool came from a shopping channel in the UK called QVC, which is where I first saw it. And I'm actually now trying to think just how long ago that was, because they've been going a fair number of years. And it must have been fairly near the start when I first saw it, because I basically don't watch it and haven't watched it for many years. I'm kind of wondering if it's as long ago as that I first started doing it. I haven't done that much in it. but it is one I enjoy because it's one I can just sit back with, and it doesn't require any, you know, there is some skill involved, but it doesn't require any sort of great levels of concentration really to do. Oh, well, I'm 50 odd now, 84 guy, so I was somewhat older. I've been married for over 25 years, so I know I did the first, I got this after, certainly after I was married, so long time ago. Kind of quite funny in a way how a lot of the crafts that I do seem to be sort of vaguely related to each other in some ways. I mean, this is similar, and that's a broad similar to sort of like the sewing and the cross stitch, and you know, rug making is similar to this. The scraper board and the pyrography being monochrome are similar to sort of monochrome airbrushing, which I also love doing. It's kind of this will be better if I do it at a slightly different yeah, I know what I'm going to do. It's a little bit awkward working at this angle to the locomotive. So what I'm going to do, just come out here about this far. I'm just going to create a block of colour here, and then I'll turn this through 90 degrees and do it the other way. Then I'm coming up to the roof of the loco at more of a right angle, and it's slightly easier to get a good edge on it. $19.85, blimey. So yeah, that's what 30 years ago now. Not quite, didn't quite get it that far, but obviously they'd been established a bit, so yeah, it could easily be that long, 10 years or more ago. So am I tempting you now, Adi? Because they're still going at Webster's. Oh right, that's how you know when they've been going far. Thank you, stream working. Have a good afternoon. Thank you for dropping in. It's really awkward working around this rim. I'm going to go around this rim a few times, I think, and no, I'm not. I'm going to put up with working at an odd angle. I don't like working near the rim. It's really hard. Oh, good morning, Wait. Yeah, of course. Sorry, stream working. Have a good morning. Excuse me a moment, guys. Sorry about going silent. My beautiful wife just came in to see how I'm doing. The only problem I find with their website, Eddie, is the colour threads. When I first got a full kit of threads from them, I couldn't tell which ones were which, despite the fact that they give you a photograph with all the numbers on. Trying to guess which colours was which was a bit of a pain. Eventually, I actually had to visit the I don't know if they still have, but they had a shop at the time, and visit the shop and go in and say, I'd like a set of everything, please, but will you please write the numbers on them so I can tell them apart? And then ever since then, I've kept, you know, when I've ordered some, I know which ones I'm ordering, and I keep adding the numbers back on. I haven't ordered any for a while. Okay, that the red tool is meant for the shiny cottons rather than this this stuff. Which I'm just looking for. I'm sure I've got one around here somewhere. I haven't got the tool, but it's the these are the cottons for the red tool. And I don't know. So when you look at, I mean, these are essentially the same colour thread. Where's the end on this? There, around here somewhere. So I don't know if this is going to show up, but if I move that out of the way, I can do this on the white. Don't know if you can see the difference there between the threads. These are it's a somewhat of a larger thread than this. So if you're trying to do something this size, then you go through an awful lot of this thread, whereas this one is, you know, is a lot easier to do it with, shall I say. So the red tool, which goes with this one because it's got a finer bore needle, you would tend to want to do smaller objects. So you could get all this detail, if you like, into something about a quarter of the size, using that tool, or I guess something this size, you'd have fantastic level of detail with it. But otherwise, it works the same. And actually, since I've just come across it, here's another one of their needles. And this is a real large bore needle. This is used with wool, normal knitting wool, and used not with this material but with a thicker. Don't have any out at the moment, but you can make rugs with it. So this one takes a really thick, as I say, 4-ply knitting wool as it's called, and you can create some really nice rugs in the same sort of idea. You know, you could take this same picture. It will obviously need to be a lot bigger, but you could create a nice sort of 3 foot by 2 foot rug with it quite easily. Yeah, that's right. Which is what that is. It's a really shiny, well, I don't know, well, wound. I'm not quite sure how you describe the wool. There's nothing. Sorry, the threads. There's no hairy bits coming out of this. You could use sewing cotton as well, I understand, with that red tool, or if you use you can use cross stitch or similar threads, the anchor and I've forgotten who the other one is, but the anchor embroidery threads, and you just take I think the 6-ply, I think is off the top of my head, is in embroidery threads. So you just split it into three twos, and it's the same width, so you can do that. So there's a whole palette of colours available. The only thing is, I tend to like things this size myself, so it's just a heck of a lot of work with that. But I don't know, maybe one of these days I'll do it. It's great actually for me. You know, that red tool is absolutely great for making things like Christmas decorations or patches to go on clothes and stuff like that. DMC, that's the one, yeah, Anchor and DMC. And of course there's the you know, the non-well-known name ones. Well, I don't have any glass blowing yet. No, and although glass blowing and glass art does actually fascinate me, but I'm not about to start and do that one. I just enjoy, yeah, I enjoy the punching. It's I don't actually know where my red tool is. It's around here somewhere, and if I can find it, I'll show you, because I've got some pieces. I am sure there's a whole bag of stuff missing from here, but I don't know. Yeah. And if you can work out what the yellow tool's for, let me know, because I can't work that one out. The red I can understand, the blue I can understand, the green I can sort of understand. The yellow one has got me completely flummoxed, and they've brought a new one out which has got rechangeable needles. Although they're a fixed length needle, I think, and yeah, so that's there as well. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say I knew I had a red tool somewhere. It's in there, but I don't actually know where the. I thought I had some pieces in with it, but I don't appear to have. If I can find some, I'll show you. They do look slightly different when they're done on the other side, because the threads. This kind of looks, you know, matte and sort of carpet-like, but the shiny threads look a lot more sort of, I don't know, metallic almost. So yeah, because they are literally shiny. I'll see if I can find some. And if I do, next time you're watching a stream, mate, you just let me know, and I'll if I find them, I'll show you. My wife's just gone out, so I don't need to make tea for another half hour. Although having said which, I think it may well be her making tea tonight rather than me because of the surgery. But if you do get another tool lady, I certainly would be interested to see what you make with it. Actually, I rather suspect that's what's going to happen, because with my wife making tea, I don't think she's got anything out of the freezer, and I don't think we've got anything in the fridge, so I think in chip shop is probably a good idea as well. Although, since I'm not sure it'd be a great idea for me to be driving at the moment, it might actually turn out to be a curry delivery, I think. We shall see if I persuade her enough, or whether she actually wants me to drive. I tend not actually to like fish and chips in an evening. I prefer them in the during the day. Yeah, okay. So folks, to anybody who's watching the studio, you can see that discussion and chat goes in all sorts of directions on this stream. If you're not familiar with AD Fall Guy, by the way, whilst he's away, I shall advertise his channel for him. He makes jewellery using chainmail rings. Makes some really fantastic jewellery, and things like bag charms, bracelets, necklaces, earrings, and other miscellaneous things like dice bags, for example, all made out of chainmail. And he's currently making himself a shop sign as well for his craft stall when he goes to visit craft markets. And I just recently bought some bag charms from him, which look absolutely fantastic. I've got them here. In fact, I'll show you guys while my wife's away. I can do this. Because these, together with a couple of other things, are going to be presents for my wife's birthday, because she loves things like this. So these are from AD Fall Guy, who made them. He made them, and just as we were discussing rings and things, he said, "Would you like to see a photograph of a couple?" I said, "Yes, please." And he mentioned they were for sale, and I saw it said sold, and then he said, "Which colour would you like? Which colours would you like?" I said, "He'd just show me a couple," and so he linked me a photograph of all four, and I said, actually, all four, please." So these were done by AD Fall Guy, and they actually look really nice. They're really beautiful and nice and shiny here. So his photographs look like what they are like in person, and they're really nice. So AD Fall Guy there. He makes these sorts of things on stream as well, so check him out. he also streams some, I was going to say, some cool games as well, or at least a cool game, because one of the games he streams is Euro Truck Simulator, which I think is a cool game because I play it myself, and I wouldn't want to play a duff game, would I? Or perhaps I just wouldn't want to admit it. Right, I shall put those away again. So I've hidden them away in plain sight. That's the easiest way of hiding things from my wife. If I put them somewhere extremely obvious and visible, she'll never see them. Now, Adi, it's not the camera, it's the photographer. You ought to know that by now. Now, it's I'm guessing you take them in a light box, given the photographs I saw, and you know how sometimes a lot of things, when they're taken in a light box, they don't actually look. You know, for example, some things will look a lot shinier in a light box than they do in real person. But those, well, you might have seen them just now on the, everybody might have seen them just now on the stream. But in person, they look as shiny as they do in the photographs. You know, it can be easy. It can be very easy sometimes to be disappointed, but not in this case. No? Okay. Just with the white background, and it's very even lighting across the photographs, and they're shining like they've been done. So, well, a decent photographer there as well is Adi Fall Guy. Yeah, a man of many talents. So if there's any weddings you want done, then maybe Adi Fall Guy's the guy for you. Okay. I have tried photographing things before, not specifically to sell, but to generate that sort of photograph. And it's not a fantastically easy thing to do, to get even lighting and everything. Standard flash. It's not a ring flash or anything, is it? Because that's often the other way of getting uneven lighting, is using ring flashes. Well, I don't need a wedding photographer at the moment, I'm afraid. No, I'm not afraid. In some ways that's a silly saying, isn't it? But I'm happy to say I don't need a wedding photographer at the moment. I'd also be happy to say if I did need a wedding photographer at the moment. So it's a bit of a nonsensical statement all the way around. I'll change subjects. English is a really funny language at times. Some things that you say mean the same no matter how you say them. Other things don't mean what you actually think they mean, and ah dear. And you get two completely different words spelt differently mean the same thing, and two words spelt exactly the same way mean completely different things. Ah, okay, that does help. Is she going to pick them up on the way home for you, Eddie Fall Guy, and save you even more trouble? You know, you should have said that about 5 minutes earlier. I'd have suggested it to my wife who's just gone out. I think I'll probably be streaming until she actually gets back, which will be till at least 5 o'clock, which is not very long, but probably another, at least probably about 1/4 or something like that, but we shall see. How long have I been streaming now? Nearly 2 hours. This is one of those art form or craft forms that fools you, because you'd think it wouldn't take you very long, and I've been streaming now for just shy of 2 hours, and all I've done on the during that time is some green down here for the grass, and same at this other side, and this blue area that I've done so far, and that's in 2 hours, and I'm kind of surprised. I've done this so many times, and I ought to know that, you know, these things take a lot longer than they look, but it's still sort of I still look at it and go, oh, I'll just spend a couple of hours and I'll finish that off, and after about 10 hours I'm getting close to the end, but right, these may be getting a bit too far apart. Let's have a look. Oh no, they're not too bad. Again, they're a little bit far apart. It's not quite, I can sort of start to see a little bit between the blue, but it's not bad at this stage, so I'll just tighten them up a little bit. It's just about at the edge. If you get much, the stitches as I call them, much further apart, you start to see the white bits in between. This makes it the further apart they are, the softer it will feel. But you see the white marks. I mean, I've got some here that was done quite far apart, and they feel really soft. So it's kind of a little bit of a trade-off, but as a picture, it doesn't really matter. I mean, most people do like to touch them when they see them, especially when they see the sculpted forms, and so there's a little bit of wanting it to feel a little bit soft and fluffy, but most of the time they're just looked at. So given that the picture looks better usually with them packed a little bit tighter, the softness doesn't matter a great deal. Anyway, shall carry on. Oh, you're going out when she gets home. Okay. Well, I think my wife will be going out tomorrow afternoon as well to visit her mother, and if that's the case I shall have the opportunity to try out a brand new craft form that I haven't tried before. I have a couple of kits to build, which should be not to build. Don't exactly build them, I don't think. You sort of make things from the kit. Could be interesting to see how well I do. On the other hand, if she's in, it could be kind of a 50-50 stream. When she's not in and not listening, so when she's not in the room and not listening, it could be one craft, and if she walks anywhere nearby, it could be a completely different craft with no notice about the change. I'm just trying to think what game it was that used to have on the old PC that used to have a boss key, so that I remember it used to be in the old IBMs, and the idea was that you could play the game, but if the boss came anywhere nearby, you just push this key and it popped up what looked like a screen that looked like a spreadsheet. And of course it then looked like you were doing work instead of playing a game. And you having thought about it, that's probably one of the Infocom games because it's kind of their humour. Ow. Shouldn't take deep breaths. Which makes yawning quite hard. Oh, okay, yeah. I've seen big red buttons on eBay before, and but of course they're just a very tiny keyboard, so a nice gimmick. But I think the boss would be asking, "What's that big red button for?" The tough thing is I work from home and I kind of wouldn't dream of doing that. I could so easily just sit and play games for a large proportion of the day. Obviously I've got to get through some work, but you just don't. It's an odd thing. I have to have streams running because I actually work better with some sort of coherent background activity going on, which seems really silly because I don't work as well in an office as I do at home. But if I have something like a stream running in the background, which I'm sort of taking notice of but not necessarily, you know, got my full attention on, I can work quite a lot better. And what I used to do when I was programming is I'd put a talking book on, and I wouldn't really be I'd be listening to it, but without actually really listening to it. So I could listen to the same book 3 or 4 times in a row quite easily. But just that sort of coherent background activity. And quite lucky actually, because they don't actually mind us doing that even in the office, as long as we wear headsets, of course. No, you just you know, you just read about it quite a bit, didn't you? The relevant, all the useful keys to be used, yes. And then experimented when you got home from work. I couldn't actually do it on a works machine these days. They're locked down. So it would definitely have to be on my own computer. But and since I don't work in IT anymore, I can't bypass the constraints. Mind you, having said I don't work in IT anymore, it's amazing how much computer support you end up doing when you're not working. Yeah. Yes, it is amazing what you can do with Excel, which has got nothing at all to do with Excel. I do that a heck of a lot of work now. There's a lot of tools I use and write for other people. That's written in VBA on Excel. I know my hand is somewhere near this needle underneath, but I just don't know exactly where, and I've got a feeling I'm about to find out. Yep, that's a bit close. That was even closer. The main skill in doing this is really being consistent more than anything else, or trying to be consistent, keeping the punches a reasonable but reasonably accurate distance apart. Not so much that it actually makes a great deal of difference. You know, you can be a few a millimetre or so out, and it doesn't make a fantastic amount of difference, especially in sort of the longer term, because as you do additional rows they all sort of push together and space each other out. But just from the point of view, if you get too close, then you're wasting thread, and if you get too far apart, you're kind of wasting thread as well. So it just seems to be, it's one of those sort of unwritten things that everybody, and I don't actually know a lot of people that do this, but you know, people seem to like to do nice regular stitches in straight lines for some reason. We love straight lines. As you can see, I'm not that good at regular, but it has also been a while since I've done any of this before. Hello Cole, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time it is, and welcome to the studio this afternoon. Yeah. Lucy, also welcome to the studio this afternoon. Yep, Eddie is correct there. This, in actual fact, this is the back side that you're looking at. This is the reverse side. The only thing that holds the loops in place, as Eddie says, it's the other loops that provide most of the support for it. But it's also just literally the friction with the weave of the material that does this. That's what stops them pulling out initially, and then they're supported by the other ones on the other side. Now, I can at this stage, if I leave the needle in like that, I can turn it over and show you the other side. I don't want it to fall out, otherwise it'll pull the threads. But so this is the front side. The actual picture side. It's a little lumpy because that's just the needle on the other side here, but this is also sculpted, so the loops are different sizes to create a textured surface. But yeah, literally they're just packed together to create you know, a nice firm thing, and the packing together does help to keep them in place. But what you can also do when it's finished, if you really want to, and it's for this sort of thing it's not really necessary, but you can take some fabric glue and coat the back, not this side but the back side, and that will sort of hold threads in place. But it's not really necessary as a display piece to do that. You can use some different thread, or often what they get used for is there's a different tool, a red tool here with some really fine shiny threads, and they get used for making, I don't know, things like badges or Christmas decorations. You potentially could even make something like a bookmark, perhaps a bit thick for a bookmark, but maybe like a small key ring type of thing, where you really would want to hold the threads in place, and that's certainly where you'd use fabric glue on the back of the material. And quite often in those circumstances, like a say Christmas tree decoration, you'd make 2 of them and then glue them back to back. But this, if it's just hung on a wall, for example, or put behind a glass frame, then there's no need really to do it. They're not going to just drop out of their own accord. They could, if I sort of took this needle out and got hold of the thread and pulled, I could pull most of this blue stuff out. And in fact, that's the way you correct errors. But otherwise, nothing really holding them in place. Lost in House. I'm taking it you're also in the stream, and thank you very much for the host to welcome everybody that's in Lost stream. You're seeing something called Punchcraft. Not the carving that I would normally be doing at the moment, but because I had some surgery in the stomach area yesterday, it's a little bit too painful for me to do carving, because your stomach muscles do get involved in it, and it hurts a bit too much for me. So I'm just doing a different craft today. I don't normally stream in the afternoons either. I'm normally at work, but it's a bit too painful to concentrate on work. This is about all I can manage, this and talking. This is Punchcraft. As you might have just seen, it creates loops on the other side in a sort of like a rug or a carpet style, and that's the actual image. This is just the working side on the back. Everybody's around today. Airborne Panda, good afternoon. Welcome again to the studio. 3D Bloke as well, good afternoon. Yeah, it's Friday, and it's I was going to say it's Friday, it's 5 to 5, and 3 knows what I'm talking about. And no, you're probably too young, Lost. But have a good afternoon. I'll be on later again tonight, probably doing some more of this. Somewhere around my normal stream time if you're not streaming. Now there's an idea I hadn't thought about. Handmade Christmas decorations out of that shiny thread. Combine that with a few rings, Eddie Fall Guy, you could get some interesting things. How many tailors do you know, Airborne Panda, that are female? And didn't you know that a lot of the tapestries from history were actually done by men? You know, I do expect the people in chat to be a little bit more respectful of each other. And I know you were just having fun, Airborne, but it's too easy to perpetuate stereotypes, not very helpful stereotypes in that way. It does tend to grate on me a little bit. Yeah, I know you were kidding, Adi, but you know what it is. It's too easy. Mr. Greenthumb, welcome to the studio this afternoon. Can you see the reverse side? Actually, you're looking at the reverse side. If you mean can you see the front side, then yes, okay, that's not too much of a problem. I do need to just hold the needle in place. It's a little bit awkward, but that's the front side. Actually, this blue sky that I'm doing at the moment doesn't look too bad. I was kind of worried it might be a bit pale, but it doesn't actually look so bad now that there's a sufficient volume there. Okay, enjoy your chips, Eddie Fall Guy. I think I may follow you a little bit later on. And yep, well, I shall be around, probably around 8 PM again in the UK. Dr. Greenthumb, and great, thank you very much. Glaucomis dragon, is it soft and can you rub your cheek against it? Yes and yes and yes. You could rub your cheek against it. Is it soft? The is it soft is a little bit it depends on how it's been done, Glaucomis dragons, because if the further apart the punches are, the hoops are, the softer it will be. So there's some areas like here where they're spaced out reasonably, quite a bit relatively speaking, and they're softer because they bend, but when they're packed in together, they're firmer. Now the cotton itself is relatively soft, and it's quite a. Let me put this down without the needle dropping out. I mean this is quite fluffy thread. It's quite soft to touch. It's not like cotton, which is quite hard. This is somewhat like a soft cotton. It's quite a fluffy cotton. So this is itself soft. It's only as you pack them together that it gets harder. But it's a bit like rubbing your hand over a carpet. Sort of a medium sort of pile carpet. It's not like a thick pile carpet, which would feel really soft, and it's not like a hard wearing shop carpet, which is really hard. It's somewhere in between, to be honest. But as I say, you can vary it just depending on how many threads you pack into the space. What's the diameter? Actually, I don't know. As I've got a ruler here, let's have a look. The diameter is, well, the hoop diameter is 12 inch, but this is actually about 11, just over 11.5 inch diameter, which in centimeters Well, hoop diameter would be 31, and we're talking about 29.5 centimeters as the diameter of the actual image itself. Oh, don't worry about it, Airboard Panda. Glaucome's dragon, sorry. Nick's wooden socks. Yeah. I haven't done any knitting for a long time, but you can actually use knitting thread with a similar needle. Well, a similar idea. The needle's slightly different shape, and it's a larger bore needle. But using the knitting thread, you can actually you use a different material. It's a bit like a canvas material, but you can create rugs doing exactly the same thing. What's a slip mat, Dr. Greenthumb? I don't know. I mean, these are close to 11 inches, 12 inches, but not quite. So what's a custom slip mat? And I'm guessing, unless there's a frame involved, then what you'd need to do with this is probably coat the whole thing in fabric glue on the back here, which would stabilise it and stiffen it as well, and then fold the edges in if it's going to stand alone, so that, because as you can see, they fray quite easily, does this material. So you'd probably have to sort of fold it in, because you couldn't really stitch it. Well, I suppose you could, but you'd be single side stitching it, probably with a curved needle, which would be quite intensive in terms of manpower. So maybe sort of fold it a couple of times and glue it down, perhaps around the sides. Oh, I see. I wonder how that would work. That would be an interesting idea, wouldn't it? Well, it doesn't have to be 12 inch exactly, of course, does it? In that way, because of course, just because you've got a 12 inch record on top, 11.5 inches is enough. Yeah, that's probably true. There is a lot of labour involved in this. I mean, it'd be fairly unique. I mean, if there's any DJs out there that want one, Lost wouldn't, and I know, because I think most of her stuff is either CDs or download. But I don't think she's got any old style decks connected to her mixing desk. But the other thing I suspect, though, is I'm not quite sure how good I'm not quite sure how good it would drive the vinyl. There's quite a lot. There's to do this whole thing, Glaucome's dragon. There's about 10 hours. So on a commercial basis, that's quite. Yeah, it would be quite expensive. It's potentially a reasonable, that sort of thing, though. Were it of interest, it's a good way of replacing materials used. And actually doing a piece and then replacing the materials. And of course, for someone like myself who is doing it as a hobby, material costs actually sort of do add up when you're doing lots of these things. And being able to just replace them and just enjoy making the things. Because a lot of the time, with whether it's airbrushing or carving or whatever, once I've made the piece, I'm not that interested in sticking it on a wall or anything like that. I don't actually like sort of lots of lots of pictures on the wall or anything, and I don't like lots of ornaments around the place. So a lot of the things that I've made in the past I just sort of put away. Oh, I didn't know. Sorry, I'm just reading back in chat. I didn't realise Lost was going to add some analog decks. Old school. Maybe they seem to be coming back in fashion now, don't they? The vinyl stuff. There's a lot of people that prefer the mixed the sound mix of vinyl records than they do the straight mixes of the digital. There's kind of something to be said for holding, whether it's a 7-inch or a 12-inch vinyl in your hand, and it's got music on it. It's not quite the same thing as holding up a memory stick with 1,000 songs on it and going, well, there's real music in there somewhere. I've done both, by the way. I am old enough to have had vinyl records, lots of them. I've been through most of the and before anybody says it, no, I don't have any wax cylinders. Oh, okay. It used to be Locomotive Dragon. I'm not quite sure that's what it means these days. Yeah. I can't remember the era. There's so many names out there. From the history of vinyl. Yeah, I've had vinyl, cassette tapes, mini discs, and CDs, of course. Trying to think what else was in the middle. DAT tapes. What always used to amuse me is the audiophiles who liked, and I put it in great big quotes, the purity of the vinyl sound. Which, of course, the whole problem with vinyl is you can't get a pure sound. That's why the sound engineers used to compress it to heck, and mess about with the frequency range to get over the problems of the fact that vinyl wasn't very pure and had to be manipulated and messed about with in order so that when it was played out at the other end, the decompression that went on gave you something approximating to what they hoped you would get. And of course these days the digital effectively means you get what they intended you to get, not what they hoped you might get, having messed about with the sound a great deal. For that was the skill in the recording engineers, was to actually create the master vinyl and get the sound such that when it played back, it was what they intended it to sound like. But what they actually put on the disc really is doesn't have much resemblance. Yeah, it is a shame. I used to love the mini discs. I've actually just got rid of I used to have a portable mini disc player. I gave it away to a charity actually. I've got a mini hi-fi, if that isn't a contradiction in terms, behind me, which takes mini discs, but I didn't keep any now. But yeah, they were great for that. I used to record all sorts of stuff, talking books and all sorts onto them, and listen to them on the bus going into work and things. Oh, what did you stream, Dr. Greenthumb? Oh, music. Okay. If you're not enjoying it, then yeah, it's probably not a good idea. But it's always a pity when somebody feels the need to give up. But you've got to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't, then move on to something else. You can always come back when you find you miss it. Which is kind of what I end up doing with games. I play a game for so long, then I don't play it again for several months, and then all of a sudden I'll have an urge to play the game, and I'll do it again for several months. Not quite the same as streaming and music creation like you guys are doing. It is, it's actually raining. Oh, blimey. I wonder what the sound I was hearing outside. I was hearing a dripping sort of sound. I've just looked out and it's actually raining. Well, it's Friday night. As we used to say, it's Poets' Day. And if you've not heard of that, missing out the first word, it's early tomorrow Saturday, and add your own letter for the first one in there. Yeah, I used to have it in a cupboard, but it's kind of like, it's in a cupboard, and I never used to get it out because these days, actually I had a disc-based digital player for a good many years, and now of course your solid state players like the iPods and similar, you just get everything on them, and there's just no point really in carrying things like the mini discs around. So I gave them all away. Plus it's so easy, I'm going to say, it's so easy these days to create a CD anyway. And that's all the mini disc player really used to be, is a CD player, but in a hard case, a small hard case. And my finger's under here somewhere. Oh, never mind, Glaucoma Dragon. Oh, I always wanted a DAT recorder. They always looked to be cool, a DAT recorder. Especially since they used to take the video 8 tapes, which I also had. Yeah, that's the trick with all the digital stuff, is good library management. And I don't think iTunes is a good library manager. Actually, a lot of my music is now recorded as FLAC stuff, and I'm trying to think who because I've got a computer-based player, house player, and I'm trying to think who it was now. They got bought out by Logitech. Things sat in front of me. I can't remember who made them originally. But yeah, that's one of the remote controls. I think who made this. It's going to bother me now, but there's some really nice looking players with some nice blue blue displays. But all my music is networked, so I've got about half a dozen players around the house connected to various speaker systems, and it's now all held on the server. But it's got a reasonably decent management and search software, so makes it really easy to find things. Unfortunately, Logitech has stopped production, so I'm probably going to end up having to go to change them all out for the other one whose whenever I try talking about these things, the names just skip out of my brain. I never used to like them, but they've got better these days. Ah, well. Yes, Winamp's not bad, although it tends to be, it's single user type stuff though, when you start looking at Winamp and how it manages things. I kind of like my stuff networked, so I don't actually have to use the computer, and it makes it easier to put it into different rooms. Now, who the heck are this other one now? Oh, God, they've been around for years as well, doing music streaming systems. For some reason, I know what keeps coming to mind is Bose, and it's not Bose. I know it's not Bose, but they keep coming to my mind. Okay. Mine was a little. It was a silver thing, and actually was just not much bigger than a mini disc itself in terms of outside. So the lid lifted up. You slotted a mini disc in, and that was virtually its size. And there was a little tiny I don't know, about half an inch down one side where the controls were on it. It was a Sony player. No, that's not what I wanted. That might actually be a good search. It's bothering me enough now to look up the name that I was trying to think of. Sonos, that's the one I was trying to think of. Sonos. I'm going to have to replace what is now the Logitech stuff with Sonos, just because Logitech has stopped selling the things, and I need to get some more. So I'm hoping Sonos don't sell out to someone else. Pretty pricey stuff, but it's actually not bad quality. Okay, Dr. Greenthumb. Thank you for the new title. Well, I enjoy your game, and thank you for dropping in and having a look at what's going on in the studio this afternoon. I think actually it's about time I was probably stopping anyway, because my wife is back and it's tea time. So I'm just going to finish this section. We'll turn it over and see how it's gone. Yep, so I'll just cut the threads off. Cut this other one off as well so it doesn't get snagged and pull out. We shall have a look at what it looks like. So there we go. It's a little bit uneven at the moment, just because my hands have been pressed on it, but if I pull there we go. Yeah, it's looking a lot better. Okay, so I think I'm actually, well, I am going to call it time. It's time to eat. My wife is back, so we will see about some tea, and then I can get ready for a stream later on this evening. It probably will be finishing this off this evening. But thank you everybody who's been watching the studio this afternoon. It has been great having you around. It certainly helped take my mind off things. And I've been a lot more comfortable this afternoon. If you are interested in seeing me again, then please click the follow button. Hopefully Twitch will tell you, but if you don't want to do that, you can also follow me on Twitter at Zaraganart. The details are below the stream window, and now with the camera where it is I can point correctly. So at Zaraganart. I do tweet when the stream goes live, but that's about the only tweet you'll get from me, so I won't be inundating you. But apart from that, I hope I'll see you all again on a future stream. I normally stream in the UK around about 8 PM at night. That's roughly in 2 hours from now, whatever time it is, wherever you are. I'm generally live from around about 8 PM. But everybody, thank you very much. It's been great having you around, and see you later.